Hey guys. Um, let's see. Sorry. I got a little bit distracted. I'm trying to switch over my webcam stuff. Um, so I can remove my background and things like that. Um, but it wasn't working out. So we'll stick with what we got right now. Okay, we need to upgrade Angular. So we'll go ahead and do that. All I've done so far is I've used NX to set up just an empty workspace that we can use to test some things out. So it installed Angular 19.1, but we definitely want to be on the latest. So um, let's get that in place. Let's see you. Flash that. So pnpm exec nx migrate Angular / CLI. So we're going to upgrade the CLI first, and then we'll do core, and then we'll do the schematics, and then anything else that's left over after that's all done. Um, yeah, I just had this weird idea this morning. Um, thought I would, I got in the mood to write some code, and then I was like, you know what? If I'm going to write code, I may as well stream it. There's no reason not to. So we'll go ahead and get this going and stream what we're doing. Um, let's also get, well, this is working. Let's go ahead and get, let's get a repo up on GitHub. So open, browse for repo, went to dev, and we'll grab our component tests, select this folder, go ahead and initialize it, and hey, a little chubby but friendly. That's that's a good description of me, man. I'm good with it. Um, so there's our initial commit. Let's go ahead and branch here, and I always just make my branches named after the date. Um, March 6th. So there we go. So we've got our new package.json after our stuff committed. So there were no migrations on that one. Um, so we'll grab Angular core and upgrade that one to 19.2. And then that's going to grab forms and all that stuff. I also want to experiment a bit with TanStack. I may look into that here, and just take a look at TanStack and Angular. So really wanted to do more Symfony, but it really looks like there are no jobs around. But yeah, the backend guy at work just left this Monday. Ooh. Um, so I'm acutely aware of how the job market is in the US. And um, the it's interesting because um, just for various reasons, companies are a little bit leery about hiring right now. Um, I mean, there's plenty of positions open, but like no movement on those positions. People are being really, really slow. Yeah, the things in the EU are very bad. They sound very similar to the US then, um, which is sad. Um, our industry is really going through some stress right now. and um, I don't know, it's stressful for everybody, right? Um, so I'm not going to pretend like, oh, I'm suffering and all this stuff. Everybody's going through it. Um, so, um, and I really hope things work out for you. I will tell you, like, one of the things, is like Claude and, the LLM coding helpers, right, become better and better. The places where developers are really going to stand out is knowing, yeah, sure, that code works, but it's not good code, right? Um, and that's where I think we're going to have to really stand out. Um, yeah. They will become programming illiterate, and the level at work is already pretty low. Yeah, so here's an interesting thing, right? Like I've been coding long enough that I've seen a couple of changes in coding. Um, like professionally, I've been coding since 1998, 99, right? So, long time, um, at least a quarter of a century. Um, and I was coding before that, and on just reading stuff about coding and things like that. People were worried about the modern IDE conveniences that we use so much. Um, they were, they were saying that it's going to be the death of programming because people don't have to remember variables and blah blah blah, and all the thinking would be taken out, right? Um, to a certain extent, it did change programming. We no longer use like Hungarian notation and things like that that you used to have to use back in the day. The IDEs have made our lives so much easier and better. Um, I hope that's the case with AI, right? Um, there's certain there's certain skills, the brain is like a muscle, people will tell you. Um, and there are certain skills um, that you need to exercise for those skills to be, to become stronger. Um, and there are, I don't know how to say it. Like, I do share some of your concern. I want to be a developer. Um, but at the same time, it's the same stuff that people have been saying forever, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons is going to take, right, back in the 80s, I grew up in the 80s. Dungeons and Dragons was going to take the US to hell, kids talking about demons and all this stuff. Um, and fast forward, 25 years, more than that. Fast forward almost 50 years, and you know, Dungeons and Dragons gave us Stranger Things, and some really cool people. So, right, like I think it's natural for the old guard to fear what's coming along, especially when we don't understand it, and we really don't understand AI. We really don't understand where it's going. Um, I think AI is like any other tool where, depending on how we use it, there's a lot of potential for tons of positivity, but depending on how we use it, there's potential for tons of negativity also. Um, so that's I got some stuff in cursor and it does things well, but there is a problem with that, right? Um, and the problem we're going to start running into are the edges, right? Like these LLM coding assistants are really, really good at covering the centers. And this is where the juniors really, really are faring the worst out of this AI stuff. Um, because those centers are um, super easy for AI to cover because it's so well known, right? It's everywhere. But it's when you start getting out onto the edges, when you start looking at memory leaks, or there was an interesting article, comment by Victor Savkin, um, and about how when you're using an LLM, it doesn't understand the version of the library that you're using, right? So if you're using an older version of Angular, an older version of React, an older version of Vue, or maybe you're using a pre-release version, right? Um, there Michael, who attends this stream, will tell you that um, he's like, dude, anytime I use Signal Store, like 90% of the code it generates comes from your repos. Um, so the only reason Signal Store is in the LLMs right now is because they're training on the repos that I've used with Signal Store, right? Um, which is cool for me, right? Because the AI is out there teaching all these writing code that I know and I write and I love and I understand. So everybody who's using Signal Store is using my code, and it's good for me. But um, you know, yeah, bonus stream today, and good to see you, man. If you guys don't know, TBD Gamer reached out a little while ago. We've been talking about doing a collab, and things are starting to move that direction. So I'm looking forward to what comes out of a collab with TBD Gamer. Um, so yeah, let's today we're doing something really weird. This isn't, I don't know. If it works out, I'm gonna claim to be a genius. If it doesn't work out, it's just like I'm doing something weird, right? Um, so I want to take a look at getting my repo set up, and digging into that. So we'll grab this stuff here in a bit. ESLint JS, we can grab that. We can grab that in a bit. TypeScript ESLint utils, we'll upgrade this right away. Angular ESLint, we'll upgrade this right away. We'll also upgrade ESLint right away. And these ones we can upgrade later. Types node, fine. ESLint config prettier. We'll upgrade that and plug in Playwright. And prettier, I like version 3 over version 2, so we'll upgrade that too. So the last stuff we need to do, did it have it listed in my, it does have Angular ESLint listed here. The rest aren't going to have migrations, so we'll do them through NCU, but npm exec nx migrate Angular ESLint. So we'll go ahead and upgrade that one too. I want to be a developer. In terms of job market, I fear because the level of entry will get so low since junior devs don't even need to study stuff. Look at Cursor plus Laravel or whatever. It does the job for you. Frameworks are becoming easier, jobs are becoming more scarce, and everyone can write a web app, make money, which devalues the profession. So to bring you up to speed, TBD Gamer, I want to be a developer is making the argument that the AI tools are lowering the quality of junior developers. I think developers in general, there's always been tiers, right? And we need all the tiers that exist. There will always be developers who want to dig deep and understand things. There will also always be developers who don't want to dig deep um, and don't want to understand things, right? So I I don't think that what you're seeing necessarily is new. I want to be a developer. I think what we're seeing is the job market is shrinking. Um, but even if I look at like Bill was understaffed. But they weren't hiring a ton of developers. They were just asking the existing developers to do more. Um, and I think that's pretty common across the industry. Um, I think at some point, right, we go in these cycles of bubbles, and then the bubble pops, resets, and then we build back up to another bubble. It pops, it resets. Um, at some point, the bubble that's in the process of popping right now, that's going to end. Companies are going to realize, oh no, I need to pick up talent, right? And we'll be back in another talent acquisition phase. Um, I really believe that the way you're going to distinguish yourself is by understanding the intricacies of computer science. And that's one of the things that an LLM can't reason about at this point, right? They don't understand the concept of a race condition. An LLM doesn't understand the concept of a memory leak. An LLM doesn't understand the concept, right? Like, even if you ask it about memory leaks and it starts providing you answers, it's just going off of stuff that it's seen before about memory leaks and things like that. Um, and that's where we are AI wise, right? Um, what, what do we do to move forward? You're gonna have to distinguish yourselves from the AI crowd if you want the higher paying jobs, right? Um, the AI crowd is going to be your craftsman level coders, and we need tons of those. And there's nothing wrong with being a craftsman level coder. But if you want the higher paying jobs, you're gonna have to stand out. Um, that's mainly just my opinion right now. Um, So for business, one dev can replace the other. It's kind of whatever for them. I like using AI to help me educate myself in the right direction when I don't know yeah, I like using AI for that too. I also think AI is super helpful in the case where there's just a ton of code to write, and I don't want to type it all out, right? Unit tests are a good example of this. When we're unit testing, um, that's where like AI is hugely helpful for me, right? Where it's analyzing my code that I've already written, and it's looking at unit tests that have already been written someplace else. And so it's taking two things that it's already seen and creating something out of it, right? AI does really, really well with that. Um, and I love it for that. I also love it when I need it to explain code to me. Maybe it's convoluted, or maybe I'm just tired, or who knows what, right? So um, I think AI has the potential to do some amazing things. Um, I it's a scary time. So on Monday, we went to a banquet for my daughter for her drill team, and I was sitting with one of my, one of the girls on the team. We were sitting with their parents, right? And um, the guy I was talking to, he's a lawyer in corporate law, doing contract stuff. And he's super worried, like he and his wife are super worried about AI, right? So, I mean, it's everywhere. Going for Java and being an expert in such tech is the way forward. See, and I think early in your career, become an expert in a language, right? Early to mid in your career, become an expert in a language. It's going to help you learn the vocabulary to be able to understand the more complicated stuff, right? And that's the that's the reason why learning any language is better than, and becoming really good at one language is really good. So, early in my career, I learned Basic, which is a horrible brain dead language. But then I moved into C and C++. And um, that experience gave me the vocabulary to understand what I wouldn't have understood before. But becoming an expert in a language is only so useful. At a certain point, you need to stop being an expert in languages and start being an expert in concepts. So understanding patterns, um, understanding just, I don't know. There's a lot of theoretical things that go on in computer science, right? Like why would you pick something over something else? Um, and understanding those whys is what makes you much more valuable. Um, so yeah, um, yeah, more concepts, right? Um, and there's nothing wrong with JS. I want to be a developer. Like if you want full stack, Java is going to be helpful, right? PHP, Laravel will be helpful. .NET will be helpful. Um, but Node and something like Nest.js will also be helpful, right? It's the concepts that are important. The language is important, but it's less important than the concepts. Yeah, you want one more, and that I understand that perfectly well. It's more like I from what you're saying, it's less about the language and it's more about broadening your horizons, right? Understanding concepts that are outside of the world where JS typically works, right? I mean, that's why learning Rust is still on my bucket list, and I have an idea for Rust that I want to do, but I just haven't gotten to it. Um, but I get where you're coming from here. I want to be a developer. Let's go ahead and push this. Um, Opponent test is fine. Yeah, all that's fine. Like, I recently saw somebody who was complaining about people using visual tools for doing Git, right? Um, I use them all the time because it allows me to quickly analyze what's going on. If you're faster in the CLI, use the CLI, right? And I think um, this is an important thing to understand is that the tools that people use make them successful, right? You know, I'm impressed by the long ships that the Vikings built, but I would never build a long ship, but two, if I do carpentry, I'm going to use my garage full of um, you know, power tools or whatever, right? I'm not going to go out and use, the hand tools that the Vikings were using. Right? It's just what I'm more comfortable with as a power tools. And there are people today that are still using like hand lathes and hand planes and things like that, and they're doing amazing things with it. I'm not going to use those tools. They love them, they swear by them, but that's just not for me. Yeah, being unemployed, man, I feel you there. So let's do pnpm exec nx run many. Let's just see if our stuff works after all of those upgrades that I ran. It should. I expect them to, but we don't know. Um, we may have to. Well, our linter is working, so that's a good sign. And our production build worked. So it looks like everything worked okay. That's a good sign. Let's go ahead and serve our stuff. Let's bring up our browser. And here we're just going to go component tests. So we should get just the typical NX perfect. I'm trying to decide if I want to add Daisy. Let me, first of all, let's talk about my idea really quick, right? So let's say we have this component, right? Just call this our test component. And let's say that this component, we want to be able to provide this component with different injectors, or well, not injectors, but different stores. Typically, what we would do is we would have our test component, and here, we would have our providers array, and inside of here we would provide store A, right? And then what we would do is we would copy this component, right? And we would create test E component, right? And in here we would provide store B, right? And this is how we would do it. I've got there's a whole bunch of copied stuff here, right? Like the template and things. And we could share the template by putting the template in an external file. We could put the CSS in external files, right? But then there's logic and stuff like that. But what if instead of doing it this way, oh, come on. So what if instead of doing it this way, what if we created a wrapper, right? And this wrapper would take, this would be create component, and this would take the store, right? And then inside of here, we could have our create component instead return our test component, but here, this would be the store, right? And so in the imports of other components, we could call create component, and where we wanted test component, or where we wanted store A, we would pass store A. Where we wanted store B, we would pass store B. And so we could have this this wrapper around our component, and all of our logic, right? All of our template, our CSS, and everything could exist right here inside of this component that's returned by this factory function. So that's the first part of this, right? The second part is, what if we could take this factory and turn it into a provider in Angular, and then dynamically provide my ads scare you. Dude, they're as low as I can put them. Um, I'm sorry that they're scaring you, man. Um, not something, not something that advertising just is frustrating to me anyway. Um, but um, yeah, sorry about the ads. I mean, last time you said the ads were for like Adam and Eve or something like that, right? Um, so maybe they're the only ones willing to advertise on a channel that gets as few views as I get. I don't know. I'm just joking. Um, but this is the idea: is to take what we typically do in Angular, right, and see if we can do it in an interesting way. And then if that works, turn around and see if we can go one step further. And instead of importing the components, have a provider that can dynamically provide components to a template. And so we could have that provider wired up into the template using signals to provide our components. And there's some key things that need to happen here, right? Like the component, the template has to be dynamic. You have to be able to bind things from the component that's provided, right? It can't just be a static component. You have to be able to swap the providers for that component too, right? And things like that. So those are the things that will make this a successful experiment in my point of view. When do we get to the cool part of the stream? What's the cool part of the stream when we actually write code? Um, I'm I'm holding off because while I'm doing all this discussion, I'm thinking about let's add a Tailwind and let's add Daisy to our. Um, we're gonna add Tailwind and Daisy, and then we're gonna start writing some code. And the main reason that I want Tailwind and Daisy is I don't want my stuff to be super ugly, but I don't want to spend a ton of time worrying about it either. Um, I say knowing that NX, and let's see, Tailwind. Let's just add Tailwind. No, it's this one, setup Tailwind. And here we're just going to go with component tests. It's adding all the Tailwind stuff. Now let's go grab Daisy. Oh, is 5 the 5 is the new version of Daisy. Ooh. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna have to upgrade Tailwind to version 4. When we upgrade Tailwind to version 4, we're going to install Daisy. Oh, so we already had Tailwind? Are we sure about that? I don't think we already had Tailwind, but thank you for that. You want to see frustration. Frustration is coming. We're adding Tailwind. Tailwind has caused frustration in the past for me. But we're going to go to the latest version of Tailwind. We're going to, we're upgrading all of that. We're going to add Daisy, which will add version 5 of Daisy. And I've never used version 5, so there will probably be some frustration there. So let's go ahead and copy this. This should add Daisy, and then in our Tailwind config, which I don't have my editor open yet, so we'll get that open. Actually, I didn't want to do it this way, but that's fine. Open a project. Come on. So weird that it has that cached. So let's get this open. We'll come back and work on the README in a bit. I want to see. We'll go ahead and update these while we work on Tailwind. So Tailwind is installed. Oh, I shouldn't have updated that. Oh well. To update Tailwind, we just need to use the Daisy UI plugin. Oh, that's way different. Way different. So we import Tailwind and then we just do app plugin Daisy UI. That's very cool. So we'll go ahead and restart this. So in our main CSS, we just need to add the app plugin Daisy UI. And that's it. Crazy. So in our apps, within our component test, inside of here, styles. So we've got at Tailwind. I think we're a bit broken right now. Is this really working? Because I think here we can just do at plug in and let's go take a look again, the Daisy stuff. Tailwind and CS Daisy UI is a node package. Yep. So add plugin Daisy UI. Does that work? Let's just try serving this again and see. Yeah. And update your post CSS configuration. Oh no. Um, will that work? I don't know if it can. Is this, I don't know if NX is set up to use Tailwind 4. Let's see if we can. NX Tailwind 4. With Angular to Tailwind 4. So Tailwind post CSS and post CSS. Added the post CSS JSON to the root of my repo. Updated the import Tailwind CSS. So Daisy 5 depends on Tailwind 4. Hope it helps. Tailwind upgrade guide. So we do need to install the Tailwind CSS, post CSS. We'll get that installed. And you're getting the frustration that you saw before. But I do want to see if we can get this done. So that adds that. And then in the post CSS config.mjs, I don't believe I have a post CSS config.mjs. I believe let's go. Here and take a look. So I need to add the post CSS RC JSON to the root of my repo. Okay. So let's go here and this is where my Tailwind config is. I'm going to add it here. the same level as my Tailwind config. So we're going to add a new file, and this new file will be called .postcssrc.json. So having a space on that would be so difficult to track down. I can't imagine. And then inside of here, we're just going to add my plugins. So we need to add that plugin. And then in my styles here, instead of this, we're going to use the import Tailwind CSS, I believe, is all we need. Yeah. And that should allow us to upgrade. Marcus, good to see you, man. Welcome to the stream. Marcus would choose .NET, brother. So let's see if this will run now with Tailwind 4 and Daisy 5. Hey, look at that. Look at that. That went easier than I expected, which means it probably didn't work. So, oh, it did work. It did work. Wow. Okay. The only reason I know that is I've talked to Marcus a bit and know what he does for a job. But I'll let Marcus pick between PHP and Java. All right, so we've got Tailwind in place. It's time to clean up our app, right? So our app component.html. We're going to take this part out. Which means inside of here, we no longer need the NX welcome component. And you know what? We're also going to let's see if yeah, it's not running. This is the thing about setting up repos, right? So let's get Prettier working. I just turned it off. Don't unload Prettier, please. Thank you. Let's go into the Prettier settings. Oh, did you just... You didn't just do that, did you? It's there. Prettier. Now, did I just make a mess? Actions on save. Me turning that off, I think, disabled Prettier. Java has a garbage compiler. It definitely looks like a tier 2 language, bro. Garbage. I wasn't gonna argue with you on the garbage compiler. Um, no, I shouldn't talk trash about languages, but prettier. There we go. Can I do prettier? Run on save. There we go. We also want to run on TSTSX, Vue, Astro, HTML, and CSS files, and SCSS. We aren't using SCSS. Let's apply that. Okay. Let's mess this up some more and save it. And now prettier works. Why didn't it fix my template? Weird. Okay. The only other thing I want to look at adding is there are some prettier plugins that I use in other projects. What just happened here? Oh, I deleted everything. That's what just happened. Let's go take a look at those those prettier things. So let's go here. Modular state might have them. Take a look at my package.json. We'll open it here. Yes, link config prettier. So prettier plugin organize attributes and prettier plugin organize imports. So let's go ahead and add those. Let's go find them, right? Prettier plugin organize attributes. So we want this one. And go to the repo. And then the other one we want is prettier plugin organize imports. Again, we'll go to the GitHub page. Let's get these two installed. So to install this, we need to import it, and then we need to add it to the prettier RC. I've already got prettier installed, but that's okay. So npm install, and we take out prettier, boom. And while that's going, we can go add to our prettier RC our plugins. There it is, right there. Man, my computer is not happy today. So here we can add this plugin. So that should work. And you know what? Let's move this up. That adds that one. So now the organize imports is the other one we want. And these clean things up for us. So let's go ahead and add this also. And we just need to add this also to our plugins array. Um, double quoting doesn't help. So there we go. So now it should start. It should start organizing stuff for us, right? And like if I bring in the NX welcome module here, and we save again. But let's now remove this one and save. Yeah, okay. So now it's removing unused imports for us. And now we're finally set up. Full stack framework. Nobody would ever hire me if I told them that I do analog. Analog is pretty cool. Um, I miss this whole discussion. And Nest.js is barely used. Yeah, Node.js. So you have to be careful when when you talk about stuff like that because there are big companies that are out there using Node.js. For a long time, Netflix, and I don't know if they still do, was using Node.js on their back end. Um, so you have to be careful about like for a long time I would tell people, oh, I thought PHP was garbage. Well, PHP is turned into a pretty powerful framework. Um, so just be careful about writing something off. You never know what it's used for, right? Until you do your research. Anyway, we're in a good place. Let's go ahead and delete this. We're gonna delete it anyway. App config. App routes. I don't know if we're going to use routes or anything like that right now, but for the time being, I think everything is working. I won't be able to see anything until I put something on there. So right now we're just going to add, let's just add an H1 at the top. Just have this H1 be our component tests, right? So at least we get something besides a blank page. There we go. That's fine. We'll worry about all the other stuff later. But for right now, it all looks like it's working. And we've got our router outlet and everything seems to be going okay. Ah, you know what I just realized? I forgot to bring up my my YouTube stream to see how that one's going. Let me do that really quick. I was just wanting to jump into things really. How many times can I say really quick? I just wanted to jump into things. So let's go to my content here. Go to live. Well, the good news is that it's been healthy for a bit. All right, that looks good. Okay, so an hour in, we finally set things up, and it's time to start writing some stuff. What I want to do is let's add a library. So we're going to go here to our NX generate. We're going to add a library. And this library is going to hold our components. So this will be our dynamic components library. So there we go. Not going to be buildable. We don't need it to be lazy. The name of the library is just dynamic components. It's not going to be publishable. It's not going to have routing. It will inherit Tailwind from the parent. So this is just a UI library. Change detection will default to on push. Compilation mode, we don't care. Display block, we're not going to use because we're going to use Tailwind for that. Flat, I don't care. Import path, actually. So for the import path, we're just going to go comp test slash dynamic components. We will inline style. We will inline our templates. That's fine. We're going to have all of our stuff be prefixed with comp test instead of component tests. Selector we'll leave alone. We could set it up to use vtest. That's interesting. I don't want to go that crazy yet, but there we go. We'll go ahead and generate this library and then we'll clean it up. Awesome. So dynamic components was added here. We've got all of our stuff, and in our source, we don't need this. Let's go ahead and delete that. Our index, we're going to delete this stuff too. And that should be good. At this point, we definitely want to stage all of our changes, and this will be our starting point. So go ahead and push this up. Yep. Okay, so we've got our starting point. So what do we want to do from here? We want to add a couple of components here. Actually, we want one component. So we'll go with NX generate, and we're going to generate a component. And then we're going to mangle this component and make it behave the way we want it to, right? So this component will be our we'll call this what do we want to call this? We'll call this our host component. So where is it going to put this? Lib host component. So this is our host component. We don't want the .component.html. Dynamic components, host components. Path to the component. This will be to our host dash component because we want it to be under a directory. So we're dynamic component, source lib, host component. This is how we want it to look. Will be standalone. Change detection should have been set to on push. Inline style, inline template. The component symbol name, this will be our host component. The prefix, we'll let that worry about it later. Skip selector, no. Skip import, style, CSS, type. Here, instead of component, we're going to go with the ng style. And we're going to generate this. Yeah, that I agree with that one, Marcus, that employers care about what you pick. Or not what you pick, but what you can produce. 5 years of job, that's the AI is what's really killing us here, right? Is they scan everybody's resumes with AI. And then they're like, oh, this person's like a 50% match versus this person's an 80% match. So the AI scanning in the job market can be a bit of a pain. Okay, so here's our host component. We're going to take this down to just host. Maybe. Our template and our styles are here. This is just host component. I don't know why it's adding the ng to the end. Eventually the tooling will catch up with what we need, right? But what I want to do just off the bat is let's run a test of this first, right? And so here, instead of what we want to do is let's export function. We're going to call this create host component. And this function is going to take, for right now, we'll just take a string and initial name will be what we pass in, right? So we pass in this initial name, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say that we want to return this. And then here, what we can do is we can say, hey, we've got a protected name, and this will be a subject, or not a subject, a signal with the initial value of initial name. So we need to bring in this. And now we're returning a host component from this, so that's good. And you know what? This doesn't work. I've been experimenting with some different languages. That works. So we can say host component works, and then we can say div a and name, right? So there we go. So now we've got our host component. And all this host component does is it just creates. Wait, why isn't my prettier? Reformat with prettier. See, my plugin's not working because that should be removed. And that should be removed. So decorators are not valid here. Do you need to bring in common module? That should work. So now if I go to index.ts, now we can export star from, man, my computer is being slow right now. I don't know why. Lib host component, and we'll go host component.ng, perfect. Which now means I can go to my app component.html, and you know what? We're gonna get rid of this. We're going to go to our app component, and instead of a template URL, we're just going to add a template. There we go. The only reason we have the router in there is I'm not sure if I want to use routing here for a bit. But at this point, we want to try to use our host component ng, right? Like our create host component. And so let's do something here. Well, for right now, yeah, we need some stuff here. So host class, we're going to add class here. We're going to add a display of block, just so that we get a block level. And we could do, yeah, that'll work. So we'll put some borders around our stuff so that we can see it. Because I want to go back to our app component here. And I want to import create component. That's coming from Angular core. Let's create host component. So, what is going on here? Create host component, and we need to give it a string. So for right now, we'll give it app component. And it doesn't like this. Why doesn't it like this? So this returns an actual host component. There we go. That worked. So we don't create a new instance. We just return the type, and then the import will handle all of that. Um, so now I should be able to, underneath here, I should be able to do a comp test host. Yep. Um, but there's a downside to this in that I can't use two of these. However, let's see if this actually worked. It doesn't look like it did. Not statically analyzable. Ah, it's not statically analyzable, which makes sense, right? It can't statically analyze what we're trying to do. And this was my fear. I was going to be excited if this worked, but we're gonna have to be a bit more creative. Um, so we do have the host component, which is very cool. Um, but it can't statically analyze that, so it can't figure out the imports. Right? And that makes sense that it can't statically analyze a function. Um, hmm, interesting. I need to take a quick break. I'll be right back. But I have some ideas. I needed just a quick break. All right, looks like I left you guys looking at my chair. Um, anyway, so this is the problem. Um, this this line of code right here. We need a way to get a component into our template that we can use and bind to, right? Because one of the things we could do here is, we could also have not protected, but read only. Read only. I don't know. Reading, right? Equals input required string. Right. And we bring in our input. Oh, input dot required string, right? And then here, right now our we can have say hi, and this can be computed. Say hi equals computed. And here it would just be this dot greeting, this dot name, right? So then in our app component, if all goes well, what is this saying? Property name of exported anonymous class type may not be private or protected. Why can't it be private or protected? It was protected before and it was just fine. So here we need our greeting attribute, right? And we can actually, we're not going to make this dynamic yet. Well, yeah, we can. So down here, we need a signal. So protected, read only greeting equals signal. Hello. We'll make this hey yeah for right. And import our signal. And one thing I'm remembering, and we can get around the static analysis. I was worried about I was worried about this at first. Sorry, oh, thank you, TBD Gamer, for being on top of that. Really appreciate you. Um, anyway, we've got we need a way to provide this component, right? And so what if we just do const, and here we do host component equals, and we grab this, right? Boom. And now I should be able to put my host component here. Because now it can be statically analyzed. So that error went away. Now it can be statically analyzed. Let's see if that fixes component tests. Let's pull up our console. Well, let's take a look at what we got, right? Well, first let's go here. Okay. Let's try shutting this down just really quick and just see if because I'm okay. What I'm doing here is I'm using an idea from this is an idea from the Signal Store. It's not just me who forgets to go to the output when things don't work. I sit there scratching my head. Yeah, exactly, right? So I was hoping this would work. Because if we go take a look at ngrx.io and we go to their GitHub repo, and inside of here, go into their modules, and let's look at data effects, entity, operators, routers, schematics into signals. Go into their source. And in Signal Store, right, we're kind of taking this idea. So at the very bottom, after all the different typings and stuff, we've got this Signal Store, right? And so Signal Store equals this. They've got the config and stuff. It's injectable. Right? And they set up some stuff and then they return the Signal Store. And this is all they do for the magic in Signal Store. So if we go up to the tests on Signal Store, we can see that they just, right, they create a store. So we're doing the exact same thing, right? The problem is that this imports doesn't work. I was really hoping this one would work. But I'm not sure why it doesn't work, is the truth. My component guy is quick. So the idea here, Michael, is I'm curious why I'm not getting. Oh, it's because I'm not looking at the multi-stream chat. That's why I'm not seeing you. There we go. I was only looking at the Twitch chat. Um, oh, and I missed a whole bunch of stuff from Ola. Sorry about that. I missed you guys quite a bit. So the premise here is, can we create something very similar to Signal Store, but with a component? And then using that component, can we create something that we can bring in multiple times? So I just wanted to bring in the simplest component I could, um, and see if we could get it to dynamically update. But it's complaining about being able to statically analyze. It can't statically analyze this to determine that it's a component. But if we were to put this in the providers, I don't think it would care, right? Um, and it must not do static analysis. Um, yeah. So it's the static analysis that it has to do of that component that makes it. Hmm. So how do we get around that, right? Um, because once we've got the host component in place, um, it's able to make some determinations, right? So it sees this component, but it's the TypeScript, right? Um, it's the Angular compiler that's trying to analyze this. And it can't analyze it because it's probably looking for a component decorator. What if I just did an at component here? Doesn't like my decorator here either. See, like we can see that this is decorated. Can we see that? Yes, it has to be decorated, right? Because the selector comes from here. And we could even we could add a selector here, which is a string, right? And here we could just make this selector, right? Um, so now if we go back to our host component, our create component here needs a selector, and here we'll just go with um, comp test host, right? That we've got down below. And again, ah, so can this be protected now? No, it still can be. Let's restart and just see if we can get. Selector must be a string. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the analysis of the components that will make this not work. Like selector is a string. Oh, it's not. It can be undefined. So selector is a string, but it's a string variable. Yeah, see, it's saying it's a reference. It can't be a string. And I understand why this is the case. Right? It can't um will this work? This can't be an array. Um need a comma there, right? But as soon as I convert this to a template string, oops, it's not what I wanted. And that it's going to be fine here, but it's once the TypeScript compiler hits it, right? Um, right, a string value could not be determined statically. It comes down to the static analysis that goes into components. Like at this point, um, I don't think we go to angular.dev and we look at the components decorator. Um, see, I mean, let's see if advanced configuration, reserve white space, custom element schemas. No. I mean, we could mess with create custom element, but um, we could try one last thing, right? So instead of doing a comp test host here, we can actually remove our selector. And then in our app component, we would change this to be, well, let's try an ng container right off the bat, right? And we'll use a component outlet. So we can say ng container, and here we can say, hey, component outlet equals and post component. Is that going to work? doing this wrong, right? Nope, ng component outlet. So I need to import. I don't need the host component anymore, but I do need the component outlet. So there we go. And now my greeting doesn't work. So we might have to dynamically create the component. That built, but I'm expecting errors because we don't have the input. Yeah. Oh, never mind. Yeah, see, we've got the required input. So we do have an error. However, we're a bit further down the road. It requires the use of ng container and a component outlet. Let's go a little bit further. And inside of here, so we can do the same. We can say, hey, protected advanced settings, or this will be host component, right? Host component. And it's going to be of type new or undefined. Does that work? Oh, and it needs to return a host component. So we'll need to bring actually it will just be return type of create. It's going to be type of create host component. It's a capital R on return type. And here we can use that now. And now we can say constructor. And inside of here, we can import then, and inside of here, we can destructure, create component host, create host component. So now we can say this dot host component equals that world. Oh. Oh, there we go. So create host component is not returning. Why is that not the case? So host component is a class host component. So the return type from create host component, type of host components. Let's just get this working. So let's take out the required greeting for now. And instead we'll just do a signal. Yeah. There we go. So we now have a way to get a dynamic component to um, yeah, we've got a way. lazy loaded libraries are forbidden. Can we just make it a component? No. For now, we'll go with any. Because we'll get it working, right? So we've got our component, we've got that. Because what I'm curious about is, let's do this. Let's create a function. Call this load host component. Yep. And here, no. And we're going to say greeting equals world for now. Right. And here we can just say, hey, greeting. And in our constructor, we can just call load host component. And then what we can do is we can add a button. Let's add a div with an input. And we will ng model this. And here we'll bind this to a signal. So we'll bind this to a name signal. So we need to import our ng models. We need our forms module. And then down here, we can have a protected name. Equals, and here we'll just go with a signal. And yeah, it can start with world, that's fine. So here, and then we can have a button. Click will be change name, right? And we're going to change the name by reloading the entire component, which seems a little bit crazy, but let's make this one private. So now we can say, hey, protected, change name. So when we call change name, yeah, we can just call this dot with this dot name. That should work. So now if we change this to like JSON and click change name, we've reloaded the component, generated the same component ID. To fix this, you can change the selector of one of these components or add an extra host attribute to force a different ID. Okay, so we've got another issue. We're saying, hey folks, exactly. We've got a new issue, but because when we reload this, right, like hey folks, when I click change name, right, we're getting these ID collisions. So what we could do, I think, we could go this dot host components dot destroy. Does that work? So we've got world. If we go to folks here and we click change name, ooh, no. Host component dot destroy is not a function. Okay. What do we have? What if we set it back to null? Allow the garbage collector to do its thing, right? So we're generating the same component ID, but what we're not doing is cleaning up after ourselves. Um, what is that? That's coming off of the app component. Oh, it's because it's an any. This is an any, and that's biting me. And now it doesn't like this because host component and component. That makes sense. We don't actually have the host component to clean up. It's just a class on that host component. Um, but what we could do is we could add component container, right? Or we'll shorten it to container for now. And what we can do is we can say, hey, protected container equals child content child here, and we could say container. And we want our container content child can be an ng component outlet. So that should work. And then here we should be able to say this dot container dot clear dot destruct all. What is going on here? Destruct all. Destruct all. Doesn't exist. Neither does that. This dot contain. Oh, this dot container dot. Should be able to clear this component instance. Wait, do I? Let's try something here. Here we'll do host dash component dash, and we'll put in the initial name. Let's see, because now we should get a unique, but it doesn't like this. Oh, it's just complaining about the, yeah. Still wants to statically analyze that component, even though we're dynamically generating it at runtime. So anytime we change the name, we're going to get host component and host component. Or add an extra host attribute to force a different ID. Let's go take a look at this error, just see. I just do some dash binding initial value, initial name. Does that actually work? Oh, so you add an extra host attribute to one of the components. That's not what we want. Let's take a look at ng. We're using, so we could take this out. It doesn't do us any good. So we're using ng component outlet. So if we do ng component outlet, let's take a look at the reference. So what we want to do, we can add, oh, we can add inputs. ng module factory. Component outlet ng module. We're using a view container ref here. Where are we getting the view container ref from? So we can see we got this.vcr. Where is this.vcr set up? So we're using this. We're creating an embedded. Okay, so we're using the view container ref to grab the root nodes. Okay. So component instance should be able to grab component instance here. So if I grab this dot loading host component, no, this dot container dot component instance. And it might be null, so we can add a null coalescing. Let's just console log component instance here. So there we go. So let's just see what our component instance is, and that may give us some idea of where to go. So if I hit change name here, component instance is undefined. Okay. Let's look at this dot container. This dot container is also undefined. Oh, it's view child, not content child. Let's bring that in. Now let's see what we get. Still undefined. Okay, time to go remind ourselves how view child works, right? View child. Initializes a view child query. Oh, there we go. View child dot required. Yes. So let's go back up here and let's grab our view child dot required. And now it's probably going to crash because my query is wrong. No. Okay, so my query is definitely wrong. It's not grabbing anything. Let's take a look. We do have container. It's right here. Let's try taking this off and just see what we get. That shouldn't make any difference, I'll be honest. Yeah, now we're getting issues with that not existing. Um, Oh, let's do HTML element. Right, because it should be an element. We inspect this. There's our ng component. But the container, that's right, the container doesn't exist. Um, how do we want to do this? Because this is the code right here that's binding it. So we've got this binding, but that doesn't actually exist. That's why the required is broken. Um, like we could here, instead of doing this, we could grab our host component. But this isn't going to work because our ng container is removed. So that variable on the ng container doesn't matter. One thing we could do though is we can show that we can bind to the greeting. Um, so here in the app component, we could um, add bindings. Um, Similar to how we see here, we can say we can have inputs, right? So we can go inputs, and here we can say greeting. Come on, come on. There we go. Oh, did I take greeting out? That's okay. Protected. greeting. We'll signal, hey, now it'll be yo. Right, and so now so now we've got our binding working. Hmm. On 20 next, I need to see that. Send me a link on LinkedIn so I can read through that. But what I wanted to do is have a resource exactly until Yo shows up, and then then we got problems. Um, the the frustrating thing here is um, so we know why this isn't working. The container query is never going to return anything. Um, because there's nothing for it to return. This doesn't render in the template. Um, what that doesn't mean though, I'm curious if I go with the directive that we're using, so the ng component outlet. Um, let's we can leave it as required. Let's see what we get if we do this. There we go. There we go. Thank you. I'll take a look at it afterwards. I'll message you back and see if it's inspired by that. I'm not aware of it. This was just something I was thinking about this morning. Um, as I was thinking about like state machines, I was so one of the things I want to do is create. I played Inscription, um, and Inscription has a lot of ideas in it about things I was thinking about with the card game that I was thinking about. With the ability to dynamically create cards and have cards created by users in kind of a plug-in system. And so I was thinking about that idea, and then I was thinking about resource, and I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if resource could be used to create cards for us? And I was like, but how would you use resource to create components on the page? And so I was inspired to write some code today, and this is where we got. Yeah, I like Inscription. It's a it's an interest. It was not. I don't want to say too much about it because I did not expect what I got out of that game. Very well done. Um, but anyway, host component is working. Yo world is working. We've got some issues going on with the name collision, but what I think I can do at this point, because we've got access to it, um, I should be able to clear the like if I go under the view container, I don't want to do that. I don't want to mess with that. But I'm curious if I can destroy this host, right? Like, um, this is what I would I would like to be able to do is just clear that component outlet. Like this just leads to a host component, which we don't want. We've got our greetings here, our module factory. We're not using modules. Um, what I, the what I would like to do is be able to do this dot container. Right. Dot, and I would love to clear it, but like if I do ng component outlet, can't clear it. And if I do like this dot component instance dot destroy, I don't think that's going to work either. We can try it. Yeah, it's just going to say, hey, destroy is not a function. And the type of component instance is any, which makes it difficult for us to do anything with it. Like this view container ref has the ability to clear. Right, so we could go this dot container dot view container ref dot clear. And I don't know what that's going to do for us. It's private and only accessible. That's not true. Watch this cool little trick. Haha. That didn't do anything for us. That's why you should use proper private variables. But clear. Can we create a dynamic selector? Because if we could create a dynamic selector, Is there a way to do that? Angular, create dynamic selector. Um, let's just see. This is 5 years old. Um, they're using a view container ref here. And we could do something similar. So instead of doing this, we could go with a div here. Um, and divs can't be self-closing. Um, right. So here we could go view child dot required. And here we can say this is an HTML. Well, this can be a view container ref. Right. And here we're going to look at container, but we can tell it that we want to read the view container ref from it. Is that not how we do it? Hmm. Can you not thought you could read so if we, yeah, there is a read on this. What is it saying here? Let's just see what we get out of this with the component instance of this dot container. Um, we've broken some things. Um, yeah, so we're just getting a native div with this one. Um, man, so so far we've got to a point where we can dynamically load stuff in, right? Um, take that out, put this back to the way it was. Right. So at this point, now we're to the point where um, we can test this and whatever. Um, the problem is that we're getting name collisions. Um, I need to end. I've got a couple of things I've got to do today. One thing I am curious about though is what if we also had an input we bound to greeting? Um, and instead of trying to clear stuff and stuff like that, let's comment this out and let's just actually that being bound should be fine, right? If I change it, that should change. Yeah. Right? So we've got a component that we generated with a wrapper, but the problem we have is our selector. Meetings are over for today. I'm happy about that for you. So would we ever recreate the component? Maybe. In a resource environment, we might, if our resource determined that it needed to change, like maybe a provider or something in the component, right? Um, so I'm very curious about that. However, I think we can get around that. I think what we could do, I don't think that we need to worry about this. Um, and the reason being, we can change the way we think about this. If instead of trying to change providers, um, what if the data that we provided and we bound to the component was a deep signal, or well, we might want to change to a signal store, right? And we might want to change what signal store was injected. Um, that's the concern. So it could be possible that we might want to unload a component and then load it again with different providers. Um, but as it stands right now, and I'll go ahead and push this up to GitHub. Um, but as it stands right now, you're in a place with this repo where you could theoretically wrap any component. Like you could change this so that your create host component takes in a component that you wrap with certain things. Um, but some fascinating possibilities here, right? Um, but the next step is to see if we can swap providers. Um, so we could set up like a couple of signal stores and then swap those signal stores. Very independent. Yeah, you're 100% correct. Like front end and back end are always in this tug of war, right? And whichever part is more powerful, the other side has to make up for it in architectural capabilities. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you work at an organization where the back end team is very powerful and has a lot of ability to dictate what happens, right? And then the front end needs something from the back end team, but the back end team's like, no, we're not going to do that. The front end team then architecturally has to determine how are we going to make what the back end team gives us work with what we need, right? And it's vice versa, right? Like the front end team could be super powerful and the back end team could be held hostage to a super powerful front end team that's constantly asking for, small little APIs to, do one-off things, right? And so there's this constant tug of war. Um, and almost always you have charismatic leaders that will push that tug of war one way or the other with leadership up above, which forces architectural decisions to have to happen in the back end or the front end, right? Um, and so, yeah, architecture is a very real thing in all software you write. Yeah. Um, well, and you're In an ideal world, you're right, TBD gamer, that those boundaries should exist. And ideally, your teams are balanced enough that that happens. Um, but sometimes you'll work at organizations where, like, one of the founding coders is on the back end team. And because they're on the back end team, the back end is sacred and you don't touch the back end. And when you request things from the back end, it's just so difficult to get anything done that the front end teams are like, yeah, we'll just solve that in the front end, right? Um, and usually when that kind of stuff starts happening, it's more an indication of organizational problems than it is an indication of the abilities of your team. A lot of software has just really ugly parts of it because of organizational issues. Um, I'll tell you a tale of misery when we talk. I've got a few of my own. I can't wait to hear yours. Um, but yeah, I need to do some more thinking on this. I also definitely need to go take care of some things. But thank you guys for being here, and thank you for sitting through me, just doing some experimentation. Right? I actually want to push this a bit further. I want to get to actual resources. So let's push this a bit further. It's going to push out the resource stuff we're doing with the Sudoku project. But I think what we do here will inform more decisions down the road with like Sudoku and other things that we have planned to do on the channel. So I think I think this is well worth the time. So yeah. And Ole, sorry about missing your comments, man. I didn't realize I got things up and going and I was looking at the wrong stream. But thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Um, you know, we may have another one of these streams pop up tomorrow during the day, um, because I really want to take a look at this and figure out what's going on. But it really depends on some other things that are going on. Um, that hopefully I'm able to give some good news soon. But until that happens, my streaming is being held hostage by my search for a job. Thank you guys. You guys take care. We'll see you next.